How do giant ocean vessels stay perfectly still in the open sea, even against violent storms and strong currents? These massive floating cities are held in place by what seems to be a relatively tiny metal hook. But what most people imagine about how anchors work is completely wrong. That is not the real secret. The truth is, it is not exactly the anchor itself that holds the massive ship in place. If you simply dropped an anchor down into the deep ocean, it would do absolutely nothing at all. In fact, if you tried to pull it the wrong way, you could easily sink your own ship. So, what is the real maritime secret keeping these massive floating cities safely in place? The true holding power comes from something else entirely: the massive iron chain attached to it. It is the immense weight and friction of this heavy chain resting on the seabed that holds the ship. This is no ordinary chain. A single link in a cruise ship's anchor chain can weigh over 130 kilograms. An entire chain can have over 180 links and stretch for more than 300 meters in length. While a large anchor itself might weigh 15 to 20 tons, the chain attached to it is much heavier. The massive steel chain alone usually weighs anywhere between 60 to 120 tons. This extreme heavy weight is the captain's ultimate secret weapon when anchoring a vessel. When a captain anchors the ship, he doesn't just drop the hook straight down to the bottom. Instead, he releases a massive length of this heavy chain to lay flat along the ocean floor. Part of the chain settles into the mud, acting exactly like a gigantic shock absorber. When a massive wave or strong wind pushes the ship backward, something unique happens. The ship must first lift tons of heavy steel chain off the ocean floor before it even pulls the anchor. Because of this, by the time the force reaches the anchor, it is pulling completely horizontally. This horizontal pull forces the anchor to bury itself even deeper into the soil, rather than being ripped out. A curious detail is that ships almost never release their entire chain into the water. Captains use a simple but crucial maritime rule called scope to determine the exact amount of chain needed. This calculation determines the length of chain to be released based strictly on the depth of the water. Typically, they release a length of chain that is 5 to 7 times the actual depth of the area. For example, in an area 20 meters deep, the ship might release between 100 and 140 meters of chain. In rough seas or high winds, this proportion is increased even further to ensure maximum safety. But what happens when the ship is located out in the extremely deep ocean? If a vessel has a problem in the middle of the Pacific, can they simply drop the anchor? In the vast majority of cases, the answer is no. They simply cannot do that. Commercial ships generally only anchor in relatively shallow waters, typically between 100 and 200 meters deep. In the deep ocean, where depths easily exceed 3 kilometers, a gigantic amount of chain would be required. The enormous vertical weight of so much hanging steel could easily destroy the ship's powerful anchor winch. It could also cause severe structural damage to the vessel, which is why ships never anchor in extreme depths. Instead, they either drift freely while waiting or utilize a highly specialized system called dynamic positioning. In this advanced system, onboard computers automatically control multiple thrusters positioned all around the ship's hull. This allows the vessel to remain perfectly stationary in the exact same spot, without a single anchor touching the seabed. But another crucial question remains. How does the captain know exactly how much chain has already been released? For this, the anchor chain is divided into standardized sections of 27.5 meters, commonly known as shots or shackles. The specific links connecting these long sections are painted in bright, easily visible colors like white or red.
All hands, stand by for anchor drop.
As the chain is released, an officer at the bow carefully counts these painted links and radios the captain. When the anchor finally hits the seabed, It isn't holding the ship yet. It simply lies flat on the bottom. To make it truly work, the ship must slowly move backward, causing the heavy chain to pull horizontally. As it pulls, the anchor's specific geometry forces its sharp flukes to dig deeply into the dark mud and sand. The harder the ship tries to move backward, the deeper the anchor digs, creating an enormous physical resistance. This simple but incredibly powerful mechanism is what keeps 100,000-ton megaships perfectly still during violent ocean storms. But when it's time to leave, how do they extract this massive anchor buried so deep in the seabed? The extremely powerful winch at the bow of the ship is activated, slowly pulling the heavy steel chain back upward. As the heavy chain is gradually reeled in, the massive ship slowly moves directly over the exact position of the anchor. Today, we rely on automated machines. But imagine the terrifying reality of sailing the dark oceans centuries ago, long before modern technology. During the 1800s, colossal wooden galleons ruled the seas, facing deadly storms, relying entirely on raw human strength. Without modern winches, the crew used a massive wooden rotating device known as a capstan to manually drag tons of iron. It required dozens of exhausted men, forcefully pushing heavy wooden beams in a continuous circle against the crushing weight of the ocean. Amidst freezing rain and storms, the captain's ruthless commands forced the men beyond their limits, testing their sheer will to survive. Can you see the agony in their faces? Thick hemp ropes mercilessly tore at their bleeding hands as the rusted anchor scraped upward. To perfectly synchronize their movements and ignore the pain, they sang haunting sea shanties that echoed endlessly into the pitch-black night. It was a life-threatening task. If a highly tensed rope snapped under the pressure, it could instantly kill anyone standing nearby. As the massive iron hook finally broke the surface, covered in mud, the sheer physical weight felt almost impossible to hold. Securing the swinging heavy anchor to the hull during a storm was a terrifying dance with death, requiring immense courage. Tragically, many ships didn't survive. Countless wooden galleons and their brave crews were dragged into the dark abyss, failing to win against the ocean's unforgiving wrath. The same relentless physics that challenged wooden ships eventually claimed modern steel marvels too, including the supposedly unsinkable Titanic. Today, miles beneath the surface, the heavily rusted anchor chains of these fallen giants rest in eerie silence, slowly decaying in the freezing dark. Every rusted link down there holds a horrifying story of survival, tragic human sacrifice, and the unstoppable power of the deep blue sea. Our true mission is to dive into this endless darkness, uncovering forgotten shipwrecks and bringing their hidden maritime secrets back to the surface. Join us on this terrifying journey into the unknown depths. If you dare to explore the deep, subscribe to Sunken Inside right now and uncover the abyss.